Dominick Cruz, one of the best fighters to ever fight in the UFC, retires. Here's the statement. To the fans worldwide, I've poured every ounce of myself into the sport for the last 25 years. I was really hopeful for one final fight, but unfortunately, 2 shoulder dislocations in 8 months caused an end to this guy's career. I gave everything I had and put it into preparation and training for this fight, focusing on my cardio and my body for the past year, but sometimes the body just doesn't cooperate. The pain isn't as bad now that my shoulder is back in place, but the second dislocation was far more complicated than the first. This sport has been everything to me. It's helped to shape who I am. Thank you to the UFC for building this platform and paving the way for fighters like myself and so many others. The UFC broke barriers to set the stage, not just for us as fighters, also for every MMA sports organization that followed them across the bridge, created throughout politics in order to allow our sport to take place legally in the United States and now the world. I am incredibly grateful to everyone who booked tickets, hotels, and flights to support me. Thank you for being there through every moment, every victory, every challenge. You've made this journey unforgettable. Thank you for the love and support. I will carry it with me always. With love, Dominick. WEC champion turned UFC champion Dominick Cruz is someone who had a very tricky style. A lot of new fans weren't around during his prime, and it's easy to see him lose to Cejudo, lose to this guy, lose to that guy, but you got to understand how plagued by injuries this man was. This man's prime was essentially robbed from him, by his own body. Just the injuries. And I personally think outside of those injuries, he would have been a long-reigning champion for sure. He would have had 6 title defenses. I don't think there was anybody at that time that was beating him in his style. Nobody had showed any signs of figuring it out. Even when he fought TJ Dillashaw, when he came back and won the title against TJ, that was such a fantastic performance, because you got to think, right? TJ Dillashaw, another generation of fighter, and he's coming to almost avenge his coach in Faber, the whole lore, right? The way Dominick Cruz went up against the whole gym too. That's another thing, guys. Dominick Cruz went up against the whole gym of fighters, all team alpha male fighters. He was just wrecking shop with them. And Faber got the first win. I rooted for Faber in those fights with Cruz, but Faber's not retiring right now. It's Dominick Cruz who's retiring, and people need to know that Dominick Cruz is one of the best ever to do it. Here he is suplexing Demetrius Johnson. I mean, listen, I know this is early in DJ's career. Shout out to the Xbox shorts. I think he talked about this on Rogan, saying how it was early in his career, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what, man? Everybody needs to learn someday, and today was his learning day, man. Cruz took him to school, regardless of whether or not he was just starting his career or not. You're in the UFC. Ain't no softballs in the UFC. So, which means he wasn't a softball. You get what I'm saying? DJ's in the UFC. He's pretty damn good, so you can't take this win away from Cruz, even though I know the haters will try. Dominick Cruz would mix up the striking. He would throw punches from odd angles, the head movement, the footwork. Everything was different. If I had to give an example of someone like him, I would say look at boxing and look at Tyson Fury and go watch Tyson Fury's fight against Klitschko. Go watch that fight, and then watch his first fight against Deontay Wilder. Watch those 2 fights, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying herky-jerky movement of Dominick Cruz. That's who he had movement like, this guy, man. You weren't going to hit him in his head. I was always one of those people saying, even when he fought TJ, I'm like, why aren't people leg kicking this guy? Granted, he could put you on your back. Dominick Cruz could wrestle, too. You couldn't just throw a kick without Dom possibly catching it and taking you down, you know what I mean? And he's got high fight IQ, all stuff like this, right? But you weren't hitting this guy in the head, bro. You weren't. And you wanted to, right? Because he's Dominick Cruz. People wanted to really punch him in his face, and he's like, I bet you can't. And he's just moving around, then he's popping you, and he wins a decision. Dominick Cruz and Faber also helped build the UFC's 135-pound division. UFC didn't have a division. They had to buy WEC and then integrate their fighters. So, the big time audience, right, the casual base of MMA fans, the UFC fans, did not know about these guys. They didn't know. UFC did a good job promoting. These guys were great. If you go back and you watch their press conferences or their interviews where they're sitting down together, these guys knew how to sell a fight, and they put the bantamweight division on the map. I have to wonder to myself, if Cruz never got injured and let's say we got 9 more Dominick Cruz fights in that time that he was injured, right? Imagine how many more stoppages we could have seen like this. I mean, we've seen Cruz finish, like when I saw this, I was like, whoa, it was a flash of brilliance. It was like you got to see it. You finally got to see it. But again, I just think when you're not fighting, when you're always injured, it's hard to develop the same way, You have to wonder if Dominick Cruz's growth in the sport was stunted because of the injuries. And that's not a slight on him, right? I mean, listen, if you're going to say his growth was stunted, he still made it to a champion. I'm just saying he could have had like 6, 7, 8 title defenses. I think so anyways. Come back from injury and show that, hey, ring rust doesn't exist is just one of those things, man. It's one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough. It's something that needs to be respected. It's something that is something to look up to, if you're a fighter, if you're someone that wants to be a fighter, if you're just a guy living his life, you know what I mean? The lesson from watching Dominick Cruz's career, the lessons add up, they're worth their weight in gold, so to speak. And thank you, Dominick Cruz. Thank you, Dominick Cruz. And let me know in the comment section below how you feel, whether you agree or disagree. It does not matter. Just join the discussion, follow for more, and leave a like if you enjoyed the time spent. Thank you. You are all appreciated.